Hello, and welcome to another episode of Your Right to Know, brought to you by the Fitchburg Republican City Committee. I'll be your host today with my co-host, as always, Mary Lotze. And we want to welcome you back. We're going to be doing a part 2 of what really happened in D.C. Now, this is a historic videotaping. This is the truth from somebody who was actually at January 6th. And never before seen stories, never before heard stories of what exactly occurred. Not the lies that you hear from the mainstream media. This is reality here, folks. This is what truly occurred. And with us, again, from last month, Sue Ianni. How you doing, Sue?
Very well, thank you.
And thank you for coming back and talking to us. This has been an eye-opening experience.
As a lawyer, Andrew, you probably see a lot of this, but I think it must even be shocking to you to hear what really happened from the perspective of one of the attendees.
Yeah.
Just somebody, we're activists. We go out and stand on corners and rally behind our candidates and causes. And yet,
do stand out,
and we're very innocent about it. And then this is what can happen with lawfare when it gets into the wrong hands.
Well, that's what the topic is going to be. You heard about what the alleged crime was at last month's episode. Now we get to talk about what happened afterwards. Mm-hmm. So, Sue, you are in the Capitol building. You were looking around. A lot of people didn't even know what was going on. Is that correct?
No, they didn't. Well, what had happened was we had heard from somebody with a satellite phone earlier, about 20 minutes earlier, that Mike Pence had been evacuated and Congress was evacuated. So the way we saw it was, okay, well, it's an empty building. It's just us and police. And we figured that's why police were letting people in. So
it was a tour.
Yeah, it turned out to be kind of a guided tour. Mm-hmm. We never crossed a police line, and I never would. My father's a retired state trooper. I respect the police. So the accusations I've heard, I get it all the time. Oh, she assaulted cops. She was part of that group that assaulted cops. Some people did assault cops, but most people did not. But if you see video, you're going to see the worst of the worst little skirmishes from different angles and thinking that it's the whole place is mayhem. And it wasn't. I didn't even see fighting until I saw CNN, like at a rest area. They were playing CNN. And, I saw it was darker and you could see like orange light, like boom. And yeah, I remember
the National Guard was what, maybe about a mile away? Yeah,
that's something that really bothers me because Trump had approved 10,000 National Guard, and it just had to be signed off by the mayor and Pelosi. And so they were stationed a mile away since 10 a.m. Now remember, the first breach didn't happen till probably around 1 o'clock or so. It was sometime a little after 1, I guess. But so they're sitting there waiting, all these guardsmen, and they were told to stand down by somebody in the Pentagon. Also, Nancy Pelosi could have called and approved them, because Chief Son kept calling her, saying, please get those National Guard here. My police can't withhold this anymore. Because there was a surge of people.
A million
and they
people,
were all tear
gassed.
Yeah, and they were all tear gassed, and so they were feeling overwhelmed, and I feel bad for them. At least the ones that didn't launch an attack on us for no reason. Most of them were just like, they were like us, like, what's going on? What is this?
So you had your little tour of the Capitol. Yeah. You got to walk around with all your people and see.
Nothing major occurred, but when was the first time that you heard that you were being targeted as an insurrectionist?
Okay. Well, just before I get into that, I just want to point out the National Guard were told to stand down, and Representative Loudermilk pointed out that whoever told them to stand down, you're calling this an insurrection, all you Democrats calling it an insurrection. That person's complicit in an insurrection. So now people in the Pentagon are committing treason? Is that what you're telling me? Why did they tell the National Guard to stand down? So that's a very good question for all of us, but we never would have. National Guard there, we would have been like, we're not crossing them. We never even crossed a police line.
Well, it sounds like there was no effort to do crowd control. There was effort to do crowd anarchy, to really incite the crowd.
People were walking in saying, I just need to use the bathroom, because there were no bathrooms, except way back at the ellipse, and there were so many lines. And so the police were directing them, just go to the bathroom. I think the ladies' room had a 60-person wait or something. But even those people went to prison. For being told, yes, the ladies' room is down there, the men's room's down there, that's where you go. So the cops are directing us, you know, go here, go there, and we were led kind of down a hall. We didn't go in any offices, Mark and I. We just followed what the cops did, and, you know, and eventually we were talking to them, and they parted ways, and they were doing that. I was like, thank you, because they were letting us pass. And they were doing this. Where's my exculpatory evidence of these cops on video doing this and you know, nodding to us? And
so what did you think for the thumbs up? Did you think it was like nice being
it was
here,
like
nice having you? Or?
Yeah, we had a kind of a discussion with them, and because someone started yelling, "You guys are I said, "Don't you dare say that! Don't you dare! They're on our side. They're patriots just as much as you are." And then the cops are just standing there, and I said, look, we're not here to cause trouble. We're not going to hurt anybody. And two of them were so young, and they're just staring at me. They look like, honestly, they looked like they were going to start crying. And it was like, started to feel bad for them. And then all of a sudden, they just walked to the side of the hall, and they just let us pass, because they'd walk a ways and then stop, walk a ways and then stop. So we just followed them. And when they parted ways, everybody's like, thank you, and they're going like this, and a couple of them went like that. That's what happened.
So now you left the Capitol.
Yeah, we were close to an exit, and a couple of police were standing at the exit, and they said, if you leave now, nothing will happen to you. And we said, we've got to get back to our buses. You know, we have hundreds of people to get on buses. So we left at that point. So
now, did you see anybody, like you saw like a video of what was the podium from Nancy Pelosi's office, or you know, things being taken?
No, I didn't see that. We weren't in that section. I guess the podium was more toward the rotunda, which is in the middle. We were off to the side, and we just stayed in a hallway. We were never in the rotunda with the ropes like you see. And the guy who went in Nancy Pelosi's office, I guess he put his feet up on the desk, really just being a wise guy. And he got years in prison for that. Now, if you look at what Antifa and BLM have done, throwing Molotov cocktails into police cars and police stations and courthouses.
Worth of property damage.
Yeah, and they'd get what's called a suspended sentence. It would be you'd be good for 6 months, and then all your charges are dropped.
So when did you?
Okay.
When did you get?
I won't throw any Molotov cocktails for 6 months.
When did you and your friends get a sense that things were going south? That you were now going to be in trouble?
When we left and we got all the people back on the buses, we were saying, "Yeah, we went in, and you know, yeah, that was crazy, huh? What just happened? I guess it's kind of an historic day," and it wasn't until we got to the rest area, Maryland. We're watching CNN, and Nancy Pelosi's up there saying, they're all terrorists, and they're all going to prison. FBI is going to find every last one of them. And I just looked at I said, I think we're getting in trouble for this. It never occurred to us that we would get in trouble for that. I saw 3 men, when we were in the Capitol, I saw, it was 2 or 3 men, I don't remember exactly, and one of them had like a bloody nose, and they were on the ground in handcuffs. And I remember saying to Mark, oh my God, I wonder what they did. Because that wasn't us. We weren't causing trouble. And I know some people did, and obviously they got arrested. And that's another thing I'd like to point out, so many things. 7 people were arrested during the whole Capitol thing, and then another 40 were arrested for curfew violations. So, and compare that to the Kavanaugh protests, where 200 were arrested, and the worst of the worst got fines. The most violent ones got like $35 or $50 fine. The Women's March, 600 arrested by Capitol Police. 600. Nobody has ever been charged federally for protesting in that Capitol. You know, ours was such a peaceful demonstration, you know, for the most part, you know, except for a few yahoos, whatever. And we got the worst of it. We all got charged federally, and they threw the book at us.
When did you find out you were actually now in trouble? How did that come down?
There was a picture of me and Mark standing in the Capitol because there was we had reporters with us because we were local activists. So we had reporters following us, and we got some pictures of us. You know, we're like fighting the tear gas, putting our face covers on and stuff like that. But apparently, one of them followed us into the Capitol. And somebody must have, I don't even remember this, somebody must have said USA, USA, or something like that, because I'm like this, and you could see me like that.
Yeah.
And they said, well, that's proof she's disorderly. Her mouth's open, she's like this, you know, she's obviously shouting. And I was saying, I don't even remember that. I could have been saying, hey, I found your keys.
Yeah.
You know, I just don't recall it. But obviously, I was doing that, so somebody must have chanted something. But that was like the worst thing that happened inside the Capitol. The rest was we're just walking.
Did you get a letter in the mail? Did you get a knock on your door?
The FBI did simultaneous raids on our houses at 6 a.m. And thank God, that night, I fell asleep on my couch. So I was all dressed, thank God. I had no idea. But yeah, they showed up at 6 a.m., boom, boom, boom. And my ex-husband's like, that's the FBI outside.
How long between you arriving home and the FBI knocking on your door?
Yeah, we saw our picture in the paper and all over the news the next day, but it took them 13 days to finally arrest us. So basically, we're just sitting around waiting to be arrested.
So for 2 weeks...
It was 13 days after, it was the January 19th, so,
You get the knock on your door early in the morning.
Yeah, like, oh, we're going to try to escape or something. It's like, look, we've been sitting in our house waiting to be arrested, basically. And if they just called us, and they did do this a couple times, they talked to defendants on the phone, and the defendant would say, well, look, I'll just turn myself in if you want, you know, whenever. A lot of people, they said, oh, no, you're fine. And then months later, they do a SWAT raid on their house, and boom, through the front door with the battering ram or whatever you call it, and you know, with the guns pointed out, laser dots on kids and mothers. There was a pregnant woman who so panicked when she saw her little boy with the laser dot. She picked him up and she grabbed him, and she lost her baby the next day. So. Wow. And that was a Marine who had PTSD. They were doing this too. So they did this to a lot of veterans. And you can imagine with PTSD, you know how dangerous a SWAT raid is? Unannounced, somebody just boom, 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 and breaking through your door. They could pick up a gun. But that's what they wanted. I'm sure that's what they were hoping for.
Somebody would pick up my baseball bat or something.
Yeah, that's how corrupt this whole thing was. These are people who would have turned themselves in.
Where did they bring you? Or now they knock on your door, bang in your door at 6 in the morning. Where did they bring you somewhere?
Well, I was like, the FBI agent was saying, well, they're just misdemeanors. Calm down, because.
So after they knock on your door at 6 in the morning, they say, oh, it's just a misdemeanor.
Yeah, he saw how I was like, you know, so shaken.
They're telling you it's a misdemeanor.
They're just misdemeanors. And I'm thinking, why is the FBI here then?
Yeah, you knocked on my door for a misdemeanor.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's 2 misdemeanors at the time.
Now, what were
disorderly conduct in a Capitol building or on Capitol grounds, and trespassing in a restricted area, which meant Mike Pence was in the building. And it was like, wait a second, Mike Pence was evacuated. What's going on here? We all thought Mike Pence was gone.
And you were
because he's a Secret Service protectee.
You were led in.
We were let in. And some people were waved in.
Yeah.
And some people holding the doors and pushing people in.
They let you
They
use
were
the,
J6ers, supposedly.
Use the restrooms.
They never got arrested. People who were like, let's go, holding doors, and even pushing people through who were falling in. Those people never got arrested.
Meanwhile, the police
obviously
inside were guiding you to the restrooms.
And out.
Yeah, I didn't get guided to the but I know other people did. We just walked and stood there, and then we followed police kind of down a hallway, and like I said, they'd turn around and stop every once in a while, and then they'd continue on. So we're like, oh, it must be like a traffic jam up ahead or something.
Now,
but
during all this time, are you communicating with your friends by text, email,
no,
telephone
the cell phones
calls?
were down. Everything was down, and we knew that would be the case.
No, I mean when they're knocking on your door at your home now, the 13 days after.
I was just. I think I was just in a panic.
So you didn't start communicating with your friends that you were with and saying,
no, it happened so fast.
Did the FBI come to your house today?
No. They took me to book me right away.
So immediately they took you out of the house
I went to the Natick police station, and some of the Natick cops looked like they felt bad for me, like, this is ridiculous.
Probably did.
Yeah, and
they see real criminals.
Yeah, and he's booking me, and he's being nice, and saying almost like a fatherly, and it's like probably the same age or younger, and he was just so gentle with me, trying to get my fingerprints on this digital scanner that doesn't work. But then they took me. The FBI drove me to the Boston Federal Courthouse. To be arraigned from Natick, after Natick booked me.
Now, were other people with you?
And now I'm facing U.S. Marshals, and they weren't so friendly.
Were other people with you?
No,
I
didn't know what happened to Mark. No, I was by myself.
Okay, so they didn't bring everybody all at the same time to the federal courthouse.
No, I think I was the only one that day.
Okay, so you were basically...
Yeah, because I was in Massachusetts. There's only like 6 or 8 Massachusetts people who got in trouble. Mm-hmm. So... and they lived in different parts of the state.
And then, so you're at the federal courthouse now, and they arraign you.
I'm at the federal courthouse, and they're doing more fingerprints and all. And then they had me in leg irons, and it's like,
gets worse.
When I was driving in, I said to the FBI, I'm like, I guess you're not used to picking up people for misdemeanors. And the one agent turned around, she said, no, we're not. Like, she thought it was ridiculous, but I don't know if that was real or not. Maybe she was just trying to maybe she wanted information out of me. But she was like, no, we're not used to that. So, but yeah, they put me in a cell, and I'm like, well, can I get the leg irons off? And they said, no, it's regulation, you have to keep them on. And I'm thinking, no, that's not possible. To be inside, you're an attorney.
As an attorney, I've gone to people in lockup, on criminal charges. They take the handcuffs off. They take the leg irons off.
It was ridiculous. It was all about intimidation. I knew it.
Did they take your handcuffs off?
They did take the handcuffs off, and they put me in that room, and they didn't give me any food. Finally, I said, "Is anyone going to feed me? I haven't had breakfast." And she said, "Well, I have like an instant oatmeal I could heat up for you. That's mine. I can just give you that."
Oh, for crying out
loud.
loud.
So she gave me that, but I didn't get it. I guess there might have been water in the cell from a fountain or something. I don't remember. But she gave me that. And then I was there till 4:30 in the afternoon. I never got lunch. They just kept me there. They just keep you in the cell.
And then how do you get home? How are you expected to get home?
After I got arraigned, it took a long time, but finally I could call my husband at the time and my lawyer too, because my husband hooked me up with a lawyer. The lawyer showed up, and I guess my husband was waiting in a car outside, and I knew the press would be there because my name is known because I was town meeting member, so they're like, oh, politician gets arrested. And, it's like, and also because the activism we've all done in Boston. So my name was in the paper before anyway, I was known. So, the press was all over this. So now, especially one of the first arrests.
So now you're arraigned, and this is 2 weeks after January 6th. Mm-hmm. And now, what when does the next thing happen? I mean,
All right. Well, they released me on my own recognizance. Mark, what they did, they wanted to search his house. So they were screaming at his parents, who were older, and, you know, they shouldn't have been doing that because that's not very healthy for them. And they put him in. They were looking for weapons. They wound up taking his jacket that he wore that day, his gloves he wore that day, his cell phone, I think his computer, I'm not sure. His definitely cell phone, and some flags that, you know, were part of our organization, Super Happy Fun America. We have our own flags. So they took those, and it's like...
Not a flag on a flag pole.
No, it was like folded up flag or something, I think that. Yeah, and then they tossed his whole house. They completely destroyed his room, pulled out all the drawers, everything. They broke things. They went in the garage. They broke things there.
Did they say what they were looking for there?
No, this is like pre-constitutional, pre-Revolutionary War general warrant. This is like, just find whatever. Yeah. That's what it's like. This isn't I mean, they said they had a warrant, but, you know, who knows? They're supposed to look for something specific, right?
Yep.
That wasn't the case. They were just... So, I mean, why would they say, we're going to take a jacket, we're going to take gloves, oh, we found a flag. They took some buttons, the Super Happy Fun America buttons. For what? So
now... How did you get to jail? What happened with the prison sentence?
Okay. Well, after I got out of jail,
tell us how you got to jail.
You were in lockup.
Why?
I was in lockup.
Personal recognizance.
And I had to walk out, and I had reporters all over me. Tell us why you stormed the Capitol. And I looked at him like, what? And that's on video. And I was so angry. I wore a mask because I didn't want them to see my face. Usually I wouldn't even wear a mask because I was anti-mask. And there was reporters actually stepping on my heels and putting the mic so close. I think they wanted a reaction out of me. Mm-hmm. And my attorney was very good. He said, walk right behind me and don't say a word to them. Don't react in any way. And then I just went to the car.
So when did you go to jail? Because we need to move along.
All right. It wasn't until they kept doing continuances.
Okay. Your lawyer kept getting continuances.
Yeah, and my lawyer was agreeing to them because he's like, let's play nice with them. It's like there was no playing nice. It didn't make a difference. I finally got, I was offered a plea deal in September of 2022. So it's about
a year and a half
later, more than a year and a half later. So, and I knew if you didn't take the plea deal, they were upcharging people with felonies.
So what were you?
20-year felonies.
What were your plea deal?
My plea deal was plead to the lowest level, disorderly conduct, just disorderly conduct on Capitol grounds. It had a 6 months maximum, but I had no prior record. So, and I was like, well, I said to the attorney, I said, I can't plead guilty to any of this. I don't meet the statute. It said intent to do this and all these. I said, we were let in. And the prosecutor came back with, it doesn't matter if you're not guilty. What matters is I can convince the jury you're guilty. And I found out prosecutors prosecute. Mm-hmm. That's their feather in their hat, especially with J6ers. Find them all guilty. It doesn't matter if you're guilty or not.
So where did you go now? For how long?
I was sentenced in December to 15 days, but I had 1 day served in Boston. And then the Bureau of Prisons contacted me to show up for, I think it was like January 26th. So it was like January into February. And it was very humiliating because it was all the way in Philadelphia, for one thing. That's one of the things they do is they'd send the J6ers as far away from home as possible so they wouldn't have visitors.
What was the security level of the prison?
Oh, it was medium security. Medium security. But some people charged like me got in high. Were put in high. What happened is I could have been put in low security, obviously, but the Bureau of Prisons had some terrorist enhancement or something attached to us, and they said no, they go in medium to high.
So now you were with Mark all of the time. You were buddying up and partnering up
side
that
by
day.
Side.
And what was his sentence?
Oh, well, he refused to take the plea. Okay, so now he still has 3 misdemeanors because they added a 3rd one in June. So it's 2 disorderly conducts and 1 trespassing charge. And he said, I just can't lie. And he said, I refuse. And so they upcharged him with a 4th misdemeanor, parading. So now he's facing like 3.5, 4 years. And he said, I'm still not taking the plea. And then they upcharged him with a 20-year felony.
20 years?
20-year felony.
What was the charge?
18 U.S.C. 1512 C2, which was part of the Sarbanes-Oxley law. It was, but
That's kind of a stretch.
yeah,
So that's why
yeah,
they
and
went
it was
through all of
never
his stuff and
used on
got his phones
protesters.
and his computers and everything like that.
Yeah.
That's where they got anything they could find to add
well,
to his sentence.
they were just fishing at
Of
that
course they
point.
were.
Yeah,
Of course they were.
But the 1512, luckily for Mark, he kept switching lawyers, so the judge kept saying, "Well, we'll give another continuance for 6 months. Your lawyer's got to get up to speed," which was very smart of him. And by the time, what happened is the Supreme Court took up the 1512. And they said, you can't charge protesters for this. This is a financial crime. This is evidence destruction for like Enron, Arthur Anderson, for, retirement funds being destroyed. That's why it's a 20-year felony, because it was that serious. But the wording was such that in that little section that they could misconstrue it that way. So, but the Supreme Court said, no, this is an abuse.
So did Mark serve time?
statute.
Did Mark end up serving time?
Well, he got sentenced in November, right after Trump got elected. I think it was November 15th. So we're like, yay.
What did he get
because Trump's promising to pardon everybody.
What did he get sentenced?
He got 5 months for 4 misdemeanors because they had to drop the felony. And then what happened is the Bureau of Prisons just never called him. So we kept waiting and waiting. And it was like, maybe he'll do a week or 2 of it, and then Trump will pardon everybody. They never called him, and he got pardoned. But some people were getting sentenced, like, right up until the pardon, and the Bureau of Prisons was calling them even after the pardon, saying, well, we didn't get any paperwork on a pardon, so you got to report, or there'll be a warrant out for you. And it was really so corrupt, the whole system.
It's corrupt and it's criminal behavior.
I thought it was like LA Law and Judge Judy.
No, it's not like that in real life.
Oh my, it is you cannot imagine what the real so-called justice system is like. It's so unjust. Many people were sentenced to decades. There was a New York City cop who, what happened was, I guess, he was saying to the DC cops, what are you doing? He was trying to tell him riot control. He's like, you can't shoot rubber bullets at people's faces. You're going to kill somebody. Where's your training? Where's your training? And boom, they punched him in the face, and he got up and grabbed the guy's face mask and pulled it off. Assault of a police officer. Yeah. These are the assaults you hear about. Another thing, somebody's yelling at a cop.
The program's over.
We're out of
program's
time.
over. The one last thing, in 10 seconds, what do you want people to know about the J6ers?
Trump didn't pardon us because he liked us. He pardoned us because none of us had fair hearings, fair trials. It was all kangaroo courts and lie after lie. And we weren't even allowed to present evidence.
And you know what? I'm not even going to say our good night tonight because I think this is so powerful. And I want to say thank FATV and Cable Access TV for having us and allowing us to do this show, because this would not be heard on ABC, NBC, CBS, or any of the Boston channels. So what our viewers are getting tonight is what really happened in justice in this country when lawfare runs rampant. And this is what Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, is trying to stop in this country, is out-and-out lawfare. So thank you so much, Sue, for coming with us tonight and telling us your story.
Please tell people the truth.
And thank Mark
we're vilified
for everything that he's participated in, helping us also, because what you two went through is too much.
Thank you.
Thank you and good night, our viewers.